So, during the week before graduation from law school, Jackie worked in the placement office at BYU. You could even say Jackie was the placement office at BYU. She had very responsible duties. Anyway, she told the ladies there that Nathan had been selected to be the speaker at the law school graduation dinner, and they exclaimed what an honor that was. And Jackie says, well, not so much. He was the class clown. And I did deliver a pretty funny speech. You may have heard of the Socratic method. Well, I expostulated at the dinner about the Socratsky method that was offered by Professor Deem. And I picked some poor schmuck out of the audience, got him on his feet, and subjected him to a parody of Mr. Deem's Socratsky method. So, two examples of how it was I came to be the class clown. There was a series where in criminal procedure where we were discussing those circumstances under which to get physical samples from a defendant's body, you have to go get a search warrant, a court order, and those where you do not. So I think you can cut his hair, and I think you can scrape under his fingernails, and you can require a voice sample without a court order. But if you want to pump his stomach, for sure you do. Take some blood, maybe give him an enema. You're going to have to go get a court order. So I raised my hand. I said, so Mr. Deem, and you always had to stand up in Mr. Deem's class, and he had a video camera focused on you so he could review your performance with you later in the day. And I said, Mr. Deem, there have been a whole lot more serious crimes committed by women lately. And so there was a case of a bank robbery where after the robbery was over with and the FBI was interviewing the bank tellers, they asked this bank teller, they were all women. What did she look like? And the bank teller says, I couldn't tell you. Why, were they wearing masks? We didn't hear that they were. No, she was not wearing a mask. Well, then why can't you tell me what she looked like? And the bank teller says, well, they were wearing see-through blouses and nothing else. And the class starts to giggle nervously. And so I said, Mr. Deem, without a court order now, could you put your suspected perpetrator in a lineup with several other women in see-through blouses, put paper bags over their heads, and see if the defendant could pick her out of the lineup? And the class is just roared. These are all Mormons, and some of them are bishops, I suppose, and many of them are returned missionaries, very Mormon group, and can we make them wear see-through blouses in the lineup? And Mr. Deem says, very nervous, Mr. Kirk, if I have to explain to you why that wouldn't work, you're too young. So another day, we had a contract law professor, Monroe McKay. He later became a federal judge. So in contract law, he needed to emphasize three important features of any contract that, you could, if there was a lawsuit, you look at one of these three things, see if you could pry it apart. So the first thing is, was there an offer? Was there an acceptance? And then was there consideration? Some money or effort or something that came about as a result of the offer and the acceptance. And so for the offer, he would draw a triangle on the board and point at that as he talked about offers. And then for consideration, he'd draw a circle over here and he'd point at that as he talked about consideration. No, acceptance. And then for consideration, he would draw these rainbows back and forth between these two objects. And he never wrote anything on the board. There were just those three things, and he would point at them as he was lecturing. And if he came in the next day and was trying to pick up where he left off, and the board had been erased, well, he would point to where it had been on the board, back and forth like that. So I usually sat in the back because, I don't know, law school did not make any sense to me. But this day I was sitting right in the front row because I needed to ask Lynn Fielding some important question. I don't know, like, how much chili have we got left in the cupboard back home? Anyway, so I'm sitting next to Lynn Fielding asking a question, and you don't talk in law school. What in the heck is that? That's stupid. But all of a sudden, so there was this one case, Kirksey versus Kirksey, I think in Florida, where it was contract law, and every once in a while Mr. Deem would yell across the room, "So Mr. Kirk, how does the principle of Kirksey versus Kirksey address this issue?" So I'm chattering away with Fielding in the front row, and McKay said, "Mr. Kirk, what about Kirksey versus Kirksey?" And now, you got to imagine how embarrassing this is in front of 120 steely-eyed vipers, these law students, to be caught talking in class. "Mr. Kirk," and I look up and I says, "Mr. McKay, I'm sorry. I didn't follow the dialogue there because I was busy copying your board diagrams into my notes." The class erupted. They just har. Well, McKay was the kind of guy that he always had to have the last laugh. So, he says, "Well, I resent you referring to my nervous tics as board diagrams." So, yes, it was quite an honor to be picked to be the speaker at the dinner, but it was because I was the class clown.